Proficiency, performance upon demand. Think you're only as good as you are right now. All right. Tell us about yesterday, Jimmy. I just thought about that. How we went and ate lunch, and immediately thereafter we got on the mats.
Oh yeah. So Mike surprised me yesterday. I thought we were gonna do some slow intro to knife defense stuff, just standing. So I ate a little bit more for lunch than I normally do, and then I show up. He goes, "Put on your gi. You go roll with Ben." I was like, "But I'm so full. My stomach hurts."
Make me run. I just ate
right?
chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That principle or topic is brought about because we always hit the sport versus reality conversation, right? And the thing is that when you start dealing with such topics, people speak about things as if they are the exact same, whether they be sport and reality. And the thing is that proficiency upon demand, or performance upon demand, all that means is that if you need to use it right now, whether you just worked out, whether you're fresh, whether you're mentally capable, your skill level fluctuates throughout the day, and in turn, you need to have a good understanding of what you can and you cannot do, and it needs to be very realistic. So, for example, we have lots of military classes, and they're strong. They come in, and we use the example of like, hey, how much can you bench? And obviously ego comes into this, but it's a real good example, mainly because people go, well, I can bench 350, and it's like, oh, can you? There's a bench over here. We're going to put 350 on the bar and show us. Just once, just show us. It's like, well, no, I need to warm up. And it's like, then you can't bench 350. You can bench 350 after you've done warm-up reps. But there's a huge difference between your potential capabilities and your actual capability at that time. And unfortunately, when violence happens, it happens quick, it happens unexpectedly, and all of the skill sets that you are proficient at come to bear. And if you focus on too many skill sets, then in turn you have fewer skill sets that you're proficient at because you're too broad scoped on what's going on. So I wanted to talk about that, and I wanted to see if you guys agreed with, or if there's a different way of thinking about that. That's a principle or something that I bring up all the time. It's why I hard focus on very specific things, and I really, really drill them, and I stay away from areas that people kind of deep dive, because in reality, it's like the likelihood that I need that versus this, it's a priority list. It's like, your speed mag change probably isn't going to be the thing that saves your life. In turn, it is easy to grade, it is easy to teach, and it's safe when you're standing still. Something that isn't as easy to grade is you getting off in the X, making sure that you can shoot or shoot while moving and resetting the OODA loop. Like, the thing is that is more important than your speed mag change, but that's on a list of priorities, right? So the thing is that that's how courses are set up. But thoughts?
Similar, but maybe just a little different is if I really had to crowd. Like they're just, without, having done it in training or whatever, if they really needed to
I'll just see
perform.
red.
Yeah, that adrenaline dumps in, and I'm going to be able to do it. And it's like,
So now you're blind.
It's all fun and games till I black out.
yeah.
Actually, talking to your dad one time, he was like, the whole mama bear thing. He goes, he's like, a mama bear and a mama hamster are going to provide 100% of their skill, ability, and energy to protect their children.
Yeah.
The difference is the ability.
Yeah.
Even some of that can get disproved a little bit. There's plenty of video footage. Like, one of my favorites. Well, no, the mama bear. That would be funny though. I would watch like violent hamster videos, hamster fights or something
Happy
like
Tree
that.
Friends. I think it's been done before.
You watch like a buffalo run at a family,
Right.
and the two parents just abandon the child to get creamed by this buffalo. Where was the mama bear?
And you see just
But I
Halloween
think-
videos where somebody pops up and scares them, and the adult
Push the
takes off
kid.
running
Yeah.
and pushes the kid down. It's like,
Throws the kid at him. Like, yeah.
without training, a lot of times self-preservation is going to be your natural reaction.
Right. And even with training, you don't know what
Regardless.
you're going to do. I think I'm getting off topic a little bit, but that's so
Right.
like people. Well, if I had been there, if he had done that to me, that kind of talk is not.
When we did the video with Seth, and I normally avoid YouTube comments because they're just ridiculous. But the number of people that are like, "Well, I would have done this, or he should have done that," and I'm thinking, bro, I've seen.
winning quarterback.
Yeah. I can almost guarantee you would not have,
Yep.
and you would have melted in that situation, you know. But back to what you're like, I did a fitness certification years ago with a guy named John Hines, who used to be a strength and conditioning coach for some NBA teams, and he's actually a Hickson black belt. And he gave his definition of fitness, which was being able to do whatever I need to do when I need to do it. And that stuck with me. You know, it's not like he's not quantifying, well, I need to be able to run 100 meters in this amount of time, or I need to be able to bench press this. If I'm up on a mountain and I'm with somebody that breaks their ankle, I need to be able to pick them up and carry them down the mountain. That's what's called on me. You know, that was kind of the mindset, the mentality. And I think there's a carryover to what we do. You know, I don't have to be an expert in all of these things. I need to be able to call on certain skill sets when I need them now. You know, I give another strength and conditioning. A good friend of mine used to be a strength and conditioning coach for the Carolina Panthers, and he talks about like you're not going to be a really good Olympic lifter and a really good power lifter. You're not going to be able to be really good at both of those things. You can be okay at both of them, but if you're going to be really good, you're going to have to focus on one and forget the other. You know, and I think that kind of is a parallel here too. You know,
That specialization and mastery and,
Yep.
you know, becoming an expert. You can become an expert in a multitude of things. You know.
Yeah.
But, you know, to master a large portion of skills is almost impossible without extreme gifts. And the thing is that people, they misrepresent what mastery is versus being an expert. Like, you condition your body in a way that it forces you to go in this direction. That means you can't go in this direction. Like, you know, it's and it's important for you to know the difference and know where your limits are. And also, I think that leads into another one of our topics. It pushes well into the understanding that by doing this long enough, I am going to force myself into an area that I need to know what that problem is. Right now, it's a benefit because I'm actually sacrificing for this. But the thing is that by doing so, I may not be able to return back to where I was, you know, before. Like, if you were to lift to the point where you start at 185 and you start lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting, and all of a sudden now you are 230, whatever it is, the likelihood that you're going to drop back down to 170 is almost zero, like, without being completely unhealthy. But like, what you're doing is you are going in one direction. You need to understand, like, by doing so, I'm here. So I think the topic is things that are unlearned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the next one. The need to unlearn training received in the past. Examples, why, and were they beneficial? I think you can kind of tie this together with earlier when we were talking about people that don't necessarily have that aptitude or that situational awareness, because their entire life they've been just unaware, oblivious. How do you turn that on in them? What, aside from the vignettes and the been there, done that, I've been in this situation, this is most likely what you may encounter in a violent situation, as opposed to just the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but
One of the things, you know, just from the sport world, jiu-jitsu world, we see a lot with, you guys will all probably say it before I do. When a wrestler comes in to do jiu-jitsu, what do? Every time you get them on their back. they flip over and give you their back,
Yep.
which is 100%. And it takes them a while before that's instinct is drilled out of them. And some guys like almost never get out of that. You know, they just get good at fighting.
But you
the
give a good wrestler 6 months of jiu-jitsu,
Right.
and he's wrecking people.
Right. Yeah. Because he has
Yeah, 'cause
grappling
he's
experience.
unlearned
not-
skills that you
Yeah.
know he
Yep.
did learn, and he adapts
Yep.
them.
He got rid of some habits that were not good for now this world.
Right. Yeah.
He understands your world better, and he's got 2 decades worth of picking people up and throwing them
Also,
on their
mad
head.
experience, like
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
mad experience is mad experience. It doesn't matter. Like, and I've had arguments with other jiu-jitsu coaches before, and it's like, oh, you know, 10 years of wrestling doesn't equate to 4 years of jiu-jitsu, and it's like, yeah, but it's still 10 years of wrestling.
Right.
Like that's still equate. That guy
That matters.
will like crush the majority of your 4 year. I was trained in wrestling by a gentleman that was a D1 wrestler, and he he would go from black belt academy to black belt academy, and he would wrestle the instructors. And he was humble, like he was just like, I want to learn jiu-jitsu, and I know it's good. It's just that every time I wrestle or I grapple with a black belt, I tap them. And he goes, I know I'm not tapping them with a jiu-jitsu technique, and I just out position them and out grind them, and like he's like, I have close to 25 years of hard wrestling experience, and I've been to the top tier of whatever, and so that was someone that's like, look, that's mad experience, but I would like to transfer that experience into jiu-jitsu. And it was really, really, really easy to teach him,
Right.
how to crush things. And because he respected me, we rolled. And first off, I was a smart ass, surprise. And I was like, well, that's great, because I've wrestled with a whole bunch of wrestlers, and I know wrestling's good, but I've never. And so we touched hands, and I'm literally off my ass. I'm like, on my ass in like 5 seconds. Like the dude moved faster than the smallest guy, but he hit me harder because he weighed like 220. He just dropped me, like, and I didn't even see it coming. And the thing is that by the time we hit the ground, I had my little patented inverted arm. I locked it up. I was like, and so he tapped on the way down. I'm like, well, I guess we're good. But the thing is that when we broke apart, there was a mutual respect of going, hey, you're going to teach me wrestling, and I'm going to teach you jiu-jitsu. And so everything that he told me to do, I did, and everything I told him to do, he did. Even the laying on your back and trying to learn, the guard and all this other stuff. But, that mad experience is huge, and it transfers really, really well over. The problem with the skill sets that you have to unlearn is sometimes people don't relate it to things that are more realistic, right? So the thing is that tapping. The difference between sport and reality, there's no tapping in reality. And I get it that there's a lot of people that throw that out there because it's just a cop-out. But if you practice tapping enough, and every single time somebody, when they verbally, yelp or whatever, you let go of something, or anytime that they tap, you let go of something, there is a probability that if you have never trained so that is something that you override, like somebody's tapping you, you're still like putting them to sleep, not because you're angry or anything, but like, just like
Out of love.
yes, out of love. If you give them a good neck hug to completion, you will let them go, because not only in this scenario, it was a scenario that happened in California where he locked the choke in and he started to get up and he started hitting the ground, but he was off balance. He wasn't tapping. And the guy goes, I let go. I don't know what I was doing. I let go just because, I saw him tapping, and then that's what we did. And before I realized it, I was standing up, and then I had to do it all over again to lock that in. Well, since that time, tapping, grappling, that type of thing, a regular aspect, more people know that that's how you submit. And so it's just another example of something that you probably wouldn't even think about, that you're creating some sort of bad habit. My dad used to talk about it in a way where he's like, when you practice jiu-jitsu and you get a submission, you are actually doing or training a bad habit if you are practicing tapping, mainly because your mind splits. Half your mind is actually waiting for them to tap. You're looking for the tap. You're feeling, you're trying to keep them safe. You're like going slow, trying to, you're like, I got it. And then half your mind is also trying to maintain the submission so that, if you have to crank it a little bit more. And so what happens is you're not truly practicing a realistic outlook of that submission. I'm not telling people to torque on everyone, but the thing is that there's a huge difference between you truly going for that 100% and trying to break it in a way that it no longer works, and you just trying to get a submission where the guy goes, you got me,
So based on skills, various things, whether it's shooting, whether it's grappling, whether it's fill in the blank, what's the best approach and how many repetitions would it take to break a bad habit?
I think
Depend on the individual. Does it depend on the skill? Definitely, right?
Yeah. I think it's dependent not only on the skill, but also how long have they been doing that habit. So last week, my stepdad called me and said, hey, I bought a new shotgun because I wanted one at the house for a while now. Mm-hmm. It's like, I have it next to the bed, and how many of you guys and girls have heard, I just will rack it if someone breaks into my house, and second I rack it, that's going to scare them. That methodology of, okay, well, you got to rack it when you're already one step behind. And two, realistically, when they're breaking in that door, they probably don't hear your stupid ass shotgun. And then three, you're probably not trained in CQB tactics, and you're going to lead with that barrel around the corner, and he's probably going to grab that barrel anyways. And so from all of these movies and old school Western or the Westerns, and they're like, and the guys outside are like, oh no, I shouldn't come in. Like, no, that doesn't happen. So I told him, and I was like, when I come home next, I'll come over, I'll show you some different things at the house, more so than what I've already showed him. And like, leave that damn shotgun in the closet for hunting. Get a nice 9mm with a weapon light, put it next to your bed, boom, be done with it. So, yeah.
I think you have to create a scenario that highlights what they're doing is incorrect.
Yeah,
yes.
That concrete experience.
And you have to get them into a situation where they're stressed enough, and them doing the incorrect thing forces them to get punished. Yeah. And what it does is we're very unaware sometimes of our own actions. Mm-hmm. It highlights it for themselves of, that was negative. That was wrong. And once they understand that, then they can now turn their practice to be intentional. And so it becomes, whenever they do it, they're now aware of it. So they can, on their own, start, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. I don't need to. And I think it'll go faster than trying to pursue some X amount of round count.
That just kind of
or
goes
rep count or whatever.
That's where something like force on force, I think, matters, because there's a pain penalty for doing it wrong.
Yeah, force on force is good. Any sort of
kickboxing.
We only learn from pain, whether it's like psychological or physical. That's the only thing we actually learn from.
That one, my friends.
Yes. You hurt me so good.
Well, I like video too. Like, if you get somebody shooting and they're slapping the trigger and they're like, no, I'm not. You can film it in slow motion.
Best debrief in the world.
Then they get that connection, like, this is what I'm doing wrong.
So we used to do that a long time ago before a instructor came out and started doing it. We'd film guys on the range on the exact same program, and we'd show them, hey, see, that's what I've been talking about. And as soon as they could see it, they maybe two more times you'd see them do it, and they'd catch themselves, and they just never did it again. Because they were able to make like the mind-body connection of, that was that thing.
Well, so there's kind of stages in learning, and part of it, so as an instructor, sometimes you have to tell them, like, hey, this is what you're doing wrong. They just have no awareness about them. And then, so for me, like teaching striking, in terms of like keeping your hands up. Like I might have to walk by and physically say, hey, keep your hands up. And then a few classes later, or sometimes even that same class, I'm walking towards them and they realize, so now they're progressing, right? They're still not where they should be, but now they're realizing it in themselves. It took me as a cue. Or sometimes it'll be, the next time I'm not even near them, walking towards them, about to say anything, and they're like, shoot, and I see them, self-correct, and then eventually it turns into that. But it's a progression. It's steps to learn.
And the fifth time, I bitch smack them.
It's like
That's just the
shadowboxing.
kids.
Shadowboxing in front of a mirror, because I can. You go through the motions. If you don't see it and you don't have somebody there yelling at you, it's easy to let things slip. But if you're shadowboxing in a mirror, you see, okay, my hands are not up. My weight is way over there, and I think video does a similar thing, because somebody can tell you all day long, but sometimes you just don't make the connection between what's
Right.
being said and what you think you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
My hands are up. Well, I mean, technically this is hands up,
Right.
but
You're gonna get
this
punched
is
in
what
the
I
face.
mean by hands up. You know,
Right.
like,
I know one of the things, and you have to bring them back to the psychological state of stress. So, for an example, we used shock knives for a while, and the idea wasn't to like hurt them because they don't actually hurt. You can dial them all the way; they don't
Yeah.
hurt, but it would elevate the stress enough to where even if they hurt it, so like I could hear like, okay, a team's gonna come in, I could arc it up a couple times and throw it in a drawer and not even have it around me.
Yeah.
And the way they would treat me when they came through the door was very different than if I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, heart rate
Could-
spike when you hear that.
Well,
When
as
you hear
soon-
that noise.
Yeah, they just reacted differently. They were like, oh, I have to do this correctly. There was like a shift in the mentality of how am I treating this scenario?
Yep.
And it always went better.
Yeah.
They dealt with this situation much better and more efficiently.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to teach that real life stress in a training situation because even now, SWIC, Special Warfare Center in school over at Bragg, as SWIC instructor, a lot of what they teach is concrete experience. Give them the wrong way first to build that systematic approach to do it the appropriate way.
Right.
Well, you can't just be like, you're dead. All right, now what? It's like
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
disagree with
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I almost go the other way of like make them earn it. Like, cause so I'll never, it's like, you can tell me, hey, this is the best way to armbar somebody. Until I do it and I know that it works, it's not something that I will default to. I can't default to your experience under stress. That's not how it works. I can't go, hey, I read it one time and the book was written by some dude that said he learned it from a guy that once did it from this, thing. It's like, I'll never default to some other person's experience. So I have to try to give you your own experience, which means stress.
and then you own it. It's yours.
Yes, it's entirely yours now. And it's something you will default to.
Yeah. And that can also be bad. The thing is that you can also default or you can prove in a unrealistic environment to do something in a certain way, and then all of a sudden you own it, and it's very difficult to let it go, right? So like we see it in jiu-jitsu all the time, or we see it in tactics all the time, where it's like, well, it worked here, and it's like, yeah, it worked there because it worked because you're good or because they sucked. Like there's two different applications to that. And the thing is that when things become upgraded, you have to be able to differentiate those. So there's a lot of factors in this conversation that you're dealing with as an instructor, and how you approach it a lot of times are very similar, and then how it goes to an extreme level of competency may differ per person, right? So like the statements that you guys are making, I've seen both work. The thing is that the question is of the efficiency based off of the scenario that you guys are working on. And the thing is that I don't tend to lean too hard in one direction or the other, mainly because it is situational, based off of what's going on. I know that a lot of times when you're speaking from an experience with Sephardic, in that area. And I don't know how deep into Swiki that you're talking about, but it's like usually entry level for the thing, or it's at a high level. So like it just depends on what you're dealing with the guys.
Know your audience.
And the skill that you're talking about, like for somebody that's really high level in a similar area. So I guess this kind of gets to the whole expert in multiple areas. Like, can you actually do that? Can you master multiple things over your lifetime? And I found that as long as you stay close to what your original mastery was, it's pretty easy to diverge to one direction or the other. There are areas that are impossible to unlearn once you have put too much time directly into something. But that's a rare case. But the thing is that once you have people that are super, super good at shooting tactics, CQB, and then what happens is you present a different scenario. The thing is that their ability to adapt and overcome that is really high, even though it's a brand new thing that you're teaching them, right? Like it's something that they wouldn't have done, but you show the error of their ways just because of whatever the feedback was and the combat scenario, what have you. And then you introduce it and you're like, hey, let's practice this. It's not that they can't do that anymore. It's just the fact that because they're so good at the other areas that it's easy just to switch and adapt, right?
Yeah, I think a good example of that is, even a lot of the guys go to Sephardic, things of that nature, or any other advanced shooting school. How many of them do like 3-gun things? I'm not a big 3-gun guy, because it creates a methodology of it is okay to be out here in the open, shoot this target, and not be behind cover and concealment. So it's like those are hard things to unlearn when you take a guy that's like so used to cover concealment and be like, you got to move as fast as possible, stand out here on top of the hood of a car and shoot this steel target. Like that doesn't always work depending on where you're at.
I just had to shift my mindset. That's all I did.
Yeah.
It was go understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And as soon as I was able to do that, the problems didn't manifest anymore. Well, I'll call them a problem, but basically overlap of skill sets. It's like, so we ran an experiment. I was a guest instructor out in Australia for a couple months with a school out there. And we were kind of teaching fighting and stuff. But one of the things that we wanted guys to do was basically cuffing procedures in a sense. And so we just had we didn't tell them that's what we were doing because we were kind of running an experiment on ourselves and our abilities, like how can we teach better? And we just told the guys, hey, tomorrow's gonna be a day off. We're going to have a grill out there, some beer. We're bringing in a coach from this rugby team. They're going to come in here and teach you guys like rugby. And all they did was 2-man tackles all day long. That's all they did. And then the following day, we literally just threw them into like an evaluation of go deal with that guy in 2-man teams. And because we didn't have any verbiage overlap, we just told them it was a game and they had a professional coach teaching them how to tackle in pairs. They went and they did amazing. But it was us not trying to give contextual overlap. It was, hey, see this for what it is, learn that, and then it's on them to apply it to something else.
Nice. Because there wasn't that stress during the learning, I think.
Yeah, we didn't tell them it was going to pertain to the next day. None of that. They had a day off.
It's cool.
That also speaks to taking a skill that is similar, but not designed for what you're looking for, and then going to your actual intended result, right? So like you're talking about cuffing. At some point, you're going to have to override the bad habits that you did create on the first day by teaching about those things on the second day.
Yep.
And then you're going to have to put in enough reps and time in there to override that. That's something that me and Jack kind of spoke on over an extended period of time. He used to do jiu-jitsu with me anytime that he was in town. And he got up to like purple belt level, got really decent. And then he was like, one day, and because he was a wrestler in high school. And one day he said that he turned the corner, guy was just like right in his face. He grabbed that person. We were working on his guard because he always smashed everyone when he came in. So I beat it into him that he needed to have some sort of bottom game so that he could get up off his back if he was ever put there. But because it was a forced situation and that's what he was training over an extended period of time, his first reaction when he was off balance was not to fight it and it was to go down. And he says that he never even knew what he was doing before he was on the ground. And he's like, I realized that if this dude had a knife or he had anything, I was dead. And he goes, so I transitioned to something and I made that guy, deal, whatever. And he broke contact with that. He came back after that deployment and it was like, Mike, we're not grappling ever again. Like this is not. And the long conversations wasn't really about that. It was about the fact that we tried to figure out what was the ratio between practicing sport and practicing what he did. Right. So like, I'm not saying that grappling isn't related to fighting. What I am saying is that what he did for a living was not anything near grappling. Was the skill something that he needed? Yes, but I could argue that he had what he needed in that environment. And what we did was we started to figure that out. And usually the thought was 2 to 1. If I was going to roll for 2 hours, and I wanted to do what I do for real for unknown amount, then 2 hours would equal 4 hours in the other one. I had to counteract it by at least 200% of whatever it was. And what we came up with was that's impossible. Like, if you really think about it, like, you know, you enjoy rolling. It's the reason why you roll all the time, and it's a controlled environment. The violence and the environment that he was in, it was impossible to double, you know, to counteract all that type of stuff. And so what happened was that you take that into consideration, and you're just like, oh, that's what are you doing that is not really beneficial, but you are saying that it is because you enjoy it, right? So the fitness test for soft personnel, right? You have a certain requirement that you have to pass on a regular basis. It is to establish your ability to perform your job. That is the requirement that you want to max out all the time. Once you can max that out, is there a benefit to you spending 4 more hours in the gym lifting weights every single day? Or is there a benefit to you running 4 more hours or whatever it is, 20 miles, you know, over the span of a week? The answer is you could argue yes or no, but the thing is that if you really got down to it, it's probably because that person loves running and therefore they run, you know, or they love lifting, or they like how their body looks in that environment. It has nothing to do with their job. Like, they could go a little bit past what that requirement is to make sure that they can always perform at that level. But after a certain while, you realize, dude, you just like lifting. Like, there's nothing there, you know? So guys that are like, well, I fight and I grapple and I box because it's part of my job, and you know, it's just like, no, dude, you just like beating people up. That's you know.
Well, you're starting to see like a personality trait, a character trait is what you're seeing when you go to like certain places, and it's like, oh, well, everyone there works out all the time. Like, it's not because the job requires it. Like, it's the personality type is that's what exists there.
Addictive personality.
I think that's an important thing too, of like your analogy with the can you go bench press 350 right now? Well, if say in a tactical athlete perspective, if you can bench press 350 after your warm up consecutively, and you do that all the time, then whatever you're resting is just out of nowhere is probably higher than the average person that can't bench press 350. So it's like, I think that's why a lot of people continue, oh yeah, my max is this, and they keep working towards it to make sure that their resting is kind of higher than the average person.
Yeah. You also have to look at your end goal. Like, you know, are you trying to increase your job performance? I had a really interesting, a captain from a pretty large department called me and was like, hey, yeah, we've been just bringing in local fighters, like local MMA guys to train our cops because they know what it's like to be in a real fight. And I was like, those guys have no idea what it's like to be in a real fight. Like the one-on-one in a padded mat, in a cage that they can't roll out of. There's no weapons introduced. There's similar size. There's a referee to stop them. You can tap out. It's nothing like what your officers are going to be dealing with in real life.
Right.
Can you learn skills that improve your ability to do your job? Yes. You know, by doing jiu-jitsu, MMA, or whatever. It's going to make you better at doing your job.
Right.
But if that's your only basis for what you're trying to apply to your job, you're exposing your gun, you're dropping to a knee for a takedown, and now you're breaking your kneecap on concrete. You're going to develop habits that are going to be detrimental when you get in an actual use of force, or you go to a triangle choke. Now the guy shoves a knife in your tank. That's going to ruin your day. You know? It's
not the knife in the tank part, but like everything before that reminded me of speaking to higher command and creating programs that you can justify. Like, the thing is that a lot of times programs are in place because not that they're effective, that they're easy to defend. Now, one of the things that we had done at Bragg, which we got flack for just because people didn't realize the reason for it, was we taught nothing but defensive tactics where the person gets choked and they defend and they do extreme trauma. But the thing is that they had to be attacked, right? And they get attacked from different angles. And in turn, what happens is you hit the entire spectrum of violence or possibilities. And people will go, well, why are you only doing defense? And it's like, well, the reason for that is these are entry-level personnel. They are support personnel. They shouldn't be in fights. They shouldn't be in an environment that is there. So we're trying to work on their confidence. And then the other thing is that you have a high probability that young soldiers will go out and drink and cause problems. And if your people get into a fight, you know that you are not contributing to the fighting, because the only way for them to be in a fight based off of our techniques that we gave them was if somebody were to attack them. So unless they're walking up to them going, choke me, then what happens is, you know that that person didn't throw a 1-2 double leg and then started elbow smashing him in the face, because he didn't learn that from us. Now, whether or not you agree with that or not, there's a huge part of things that get established and stay in position because of what you can actually, justify. And so, but
I remember reading a quote from a general during the Vietnam War, and we lost like 10,000 aircraft in the Vietnam War, if you're not familiar with statistics like that. But when he was posed the question, when somebody asked him the question, why are we losing so many of our pilots? His answer was simple. It was because we don't lose enough in training. And that's 60 years ago. So societal norms have kind of pushed us away from the willingness to be prepared for situations like we're discussing here.
Well, and we talk all the time, like, if you're not failing in training, you're not really training. Like,
Exactly. Train like you fight.
Like,
right?
if you're not losing, there's no way you're improving. There's no way you're getting better.
Right.
You just can't do it. Like, if you want to get really good at basketball and you're winning all the time, well, stop playing 8-year-olds. Like, if you're constantly smashing the person that you're training with, then you need to have better training partners or better coaching or something. If you're constantly winning, there's no improvement happening. It can't be.
if you're the smartest
brain
man in
dump
the
it.
room.
Yep. Like
You brain dump the win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perishable skill.
Yeah, because when you lose,
you do.
At least me, I'll sit on that for days thinking about what got me to that point. What were the three things that happened before that dude caught that arm bar?
Yeah.
What could I have done to avoid that position? Those kinds of things. I tap the other guy. I don't think about it again. It's like whatever.
All right, so I think we're well past our time. This actually worked out much better than I had hoped. We got into a rhythm. We started talking, going back and forth. I don't think anybody was dishonest with their answers, but I really appreciate everybody, volunteering and coming out. I would like to take a break and maybe finish some of this. If we have time, we'll just talk to the videographers. But if this does end that first session, thanks for coming out, guys. So.